Okay, so I might just start with a very simple story. This happened to me some years ago, and I was very taken by it. I was working in it was community work rather than church work, but I was working in a large urban community that was had a lot of drug problems, a lot of violent problems, and was listening to parents about what life is like for them. The whole idea was to see if we could have some sort of a program or a support that was relevant to them as parents of children growing up in this environment. Um, so we listened to them. It was very powerful listening because the depth of the parents, the quality of the parents, the love that the parents had for their kids, the humanity of the parents, all was hugely obvious, but also the suffering, the anxiety that they had in regard to how do they support their children in the environment, in that kind of drugs environment. If they let their children out in the street, their children were vulnerable to be preyed on. If they kept their children off the street, the children were vulnerable to being picked on. So it was a very difficult situation. Anyway, we worked through it, and we identified a support program that actually worked quite well, that was based on listening to the parents. But the thing that struck me while I was at that was that all those parents had their children baptized. Uh, None of those parents were regular churchgoers, but all of them wanted their child baptized. But there was absolutely nothing in the baptism ceremony, there was nothing in the baptism preparation that remotely even touched on the reality of their lives. Like, what's it like to have a baby born in this environment? What's it like to be a parent with that child's future in your hand? And it struck me forcibly at the time. That was a huge pity. Like, wouldn't it be fabulous if there was some way in the whole baptism program, can we listen to where the parents are at? And can we seek uh, to have a conversation with them? What in God's name is the relevance of baptism, for you and your child in the light of this reality? So anyway, that was something that struck me strongly, and like, because I'd be very conscious that for the most part the baptism programs that were operating in that parish and other parishes, would explain to parents about the different symbols and the relevance of the symbols and what you have to do with the ceremony and so on. Um, but it was all monologue. Um, yeah, so anyway, anyway, that was kind of that's something that has stayed with me. And then I was hugely struck when Pope Francis was elected, and his very first letter was on the joy of the gospel. And he said something that for me just made so much sense, and reminded me of that experience with the parents in the housing estate. He says, you can't speak about the gospel if you don't first listen to the people you are speaking to. You need to get a feel for their lives. And having gotten a feel for their lives, you need to be able to speak to them in a language that they understand. Yeah, so and again, I would. It seems to me like that when it comes to key moments, uh, key family moments like baptisms or first communions or confirmation, that there's a powerful message there. And what I want to share with you tonight was an effort in another diocese, in Dublin Diocese, to actually respond to the moment, in that spirit. Can we listen to the parents? Can we get a sense of where they're at? What's their spirit? and can we begin to speak to them in a language that connects with their spirit, in a language that they understand. So that's anyway. That's where we're going tonight. So okay. So this is an image when the synod process that we've all heard about started a few years ago. There was an introductory letter, and it very much has Pope Francis's stamp on it. And Francis is saying that in any mission situation there are three players. He said there's Jesus, there's the crowd, and what I've called here the crew. And I think this image of there's Jesus in the boat. He has the crew with him, supporting him, but his focus is on the crowd. And some of the crowd are close to the shore, some of them are beside the boat, and some of them are back a good bit. They're a bit distant, but nonetheless, they're curious onlookers. I think that's a marvelous image. Francis is saying that we can't just focus on the crew. That's the very committed church people. That wasn't Jesus' practice. Jesus had committed church people to help him to engage with the wider community, the what are called in the Gospels the crowd. And I think it's a very useful image when we think about parents and confirmation, that they're the crowd rather than the crew. And sometimes we're resentful of them because they're not the crew, because they're not regular churchgoers, because they're not helping out in various church activities. They just come when they want to. But Francis is clear that Jesus had a very strong and very positive focus on the crowd, and his concern was how to offer them good news. So what does that mean in our parish today? So we'll go on, David, to the next image. So I've found this image. See that those concentric circles there. I found that a useful way of imaging parish today. At the center of the parish, you have the C group, and they correspond to the crew, like people who are very committed. They're part of different kinds of ministry groups, liturgy groups, parish pastoral councils, and so on. Like they're the people that get their hands, that get their hands dirty. And in the recent mapping exercise we did across the diocese, it looks like there's at least 700 different groups across the diocese and parishes across the diocese who are actively helping out. They're supported, of course, by priests and by religious, by the permanent deacons now, and also by the lay pastoral leaders. So you have a strong crew still in the diocese. And around the crew is the B group, and they're the regular churchgoers. They stay reasonably close to church. They don't want to be C's, but nonetheless, they turn up most weekends at Mass. And then that group has gotten very small in relative to what it was in the past. And then beyond the B group, there's the A group, and those are the group that are further away. They're the crowd, in the sense that they don't come regularly to Sunday liturgy, but they turn up on occasion, particularly family occasions like baptisms, weddings, funerals, first communions, confirmations, and so on. And I suppose what I'm saying, and I think what Pope Francis is saying, is that rather than resent them for turning up only on those occasions, that we recognize this is an opportunity for sharing some good news with them. And the, so that's the parish, the A's, the B's, and the C's. And Pope Francis is very clear that the A group, those irregular attenders, are part and parcel of the parish. And he's also clear that the parish and that the church as a whole exists within a wider community of neighbours. People of different religions, people of no religion, people who have intentionally left the church. And Francis, again, would look for the church to have a positive relationship with our neighbours, and that together we would work to build up a civilization of love. So that picture, like, there's a great spiritual variety in today's world, like compared to what we perhaps knew when we were growing up. Um, and there we have the A group. They're more distant, but are still onlookers at certain occasions, a bit like Zacchaeus in the gospel story. Zacchaeus climbed up a tree, was a bit at a distance, but Jesus called to him. And I think uh, Jessie Rogers, at the beginning of this year, in her webinar, she called on us to be curious about where God is working in the lives of all these people. And that means that as church, we can walk with them, we can contemplate their lives, and we can seek to share the good news in a language they understand. So anyway, that's the broad background to this confirmation program. Pope Francis's sense that of recognizing that God isn't confined within narrow circles. He's not confined within the C group. God isn't confined within the B group. God isn't even confined within the A group, but he's active there. God is active across the entire community. So in preparation a couple of years ago, it was actually during the COVID period, a working group got together in Dublin Diocese to look at how might we develop a program that would reach out particularly to parents in the A group, to parents more distant from church who still wanted their children to have confirmation, like what's going on for them. So we'll go on there, David. Yeah. I just want to offer you that phrase there. Blessed are the distant. That's from a Father Halleck who works with Pope Francis and who's commentated on his life and his work. And he would say that those who are distant from the church but maybe curious onlookers bring a lot of blessings to the church. That there is a depth and quality in their lives that calls us to pay attention, and also it challenges us to find a means, to find a language of better communicating the gospel, so that those who are distant from us kind of help us not to become blasé or locked into old ways of working. Okay, we go on then. So the first thing we did was we did an exercise in listening to the parents. We got a group of about 20 individuals from a variety of parishes, from inner city parishes, from urban working class parishes, middle class parishes, and rural parishes. And through Zoom, we had one-to-one conversations with them where we tried to listen to their lives, where we tried to contemplate their lives. And I'm not going to go into detail on all the questions, but you'll see. Like it was about 45-minute conversation. So we were asking them, like, what would you like to tell us about yourself? Did you ever live or work abroad? Are you working outside the home? What are your hobbies and interests? What about your family now? So those opening questions, and then we'll go on again, David. And then listening, what's important to me now? Who are the most important people in your life now? What are the things you most enjoy doing? What are the things that most stress you? How important is money? How important is work? So if you can see from those questions, trying to get inside the person, trying to get a feel for their spirit, what actually motivates them, what attracts them. Yeah. And then we went on to a third set of questions that looked more explicitly at the meaning of life and where God fits into their life. Like, what does it mean to you to live a good life? Do you believe in God? Um, can you say why you got your child baptized? What was the best part of the experience? And so on. We were trying to get a feel for what was their interest in connecting with the church. So that was very powerful. Like it was one-to-one interviews with over 20 individuals. And those with permission of the individuals, those interviews were recorded, they were transcribed, and they were studied very carefully. And what came back from them? What came back from them? So we'll go on, or go on, David, to the some of the key um, messages we got. Now, these were largely non-church going parents. Like some of them were church going, but they were largely non-church going. And they were kind of regular parents, like they weren't people whose lives were broken. So we were getting a kind of a middle group rather than a group that were extremely, were in extreme circumstances. But what came across very strongly was the depth of their lives. Like they thought about life, they felt about life, they cared about life. Family was central to their lives. Their own kids, their brothers and sisters, their parents. A lot of them would have had elderly parents. It was very clear that for them, success was more than material things. They were very anxious to generate a livelihood. They needed money to rear their families, to have a nice home, and so on and so forth. But they weren't so locked into money and material things that they didn't have a feel for people and for people's spirit. They had strong values centered on others. They weren't selfish people. And they were anxious to pass on those values to their children. Another thing that came across strongly was that the family sacraments were important to them. Now, you might think that's odd because they don't go to Mass before they had the confirmation, they didn't go to Mass after the confirmation. So, why were they important? They were part of a family tradition. They had a sense of a place for the spiritual in their lives, that they would have remembered their confirmation, they would have heard about their parents' confirmation, and now they wanted their own children to have confirmation. There was a sense. Um, of in terms of faith, that they weren't by any means what you'd call convinced atheists. And one of Pope Francis's, that's the Father Halleck that I mentioned, he speaks about faith in a secular society. He works in Czechoslovakia, one of the most secular countries in the world, but he would say that faith is actually much more widespread than we give credence to. That a lot of the times faith is functioning in people's lives. Faith is God's presence in their lives, God's acting in their lives, and their response to that, and that it can be functioning consciously but also unconsciously. And that so that it's not a very simple thing, he's saying, that either people believe or they don't. It's a much more mixed picture where people have some sense of God without necessarily being able to articulate that clearly. And one of the complexities is that among a lot of these parents who are very good people who care for their kids, who have a deep humanity, that they have a certain suspicion of the church. And that's not unconnected to the scandals that we've gone through. That they are a bit like Zacchaeus. They stand back a bit. They're not too keen to get too close or too involved in the church, but they do want to connect at certain moments. So that's kind of the picture that we picked up. And what we tried to do then was to create a program that in some way spoke to that reality, that in some way reflected the journey that those parents were on in rearing their kids and bringing them through moments from baptism, communion, confirmation, just to try and reflect back to them their lives, and in that context to see, is there any way we can express something of God's good news for them? So what we ended up with now, we were under pressure because, say, COVID broke out and it wasn't possible to have the regular confirmation meetings with parents. So we came up with a video program that could be shown via Zoom to parents in their own home with their kids with them. And I'll show you the shape of that program. It's just a half an hour discussion and it runs up to 3 nights, a half an hour discussion that runs for 3 nights. But since COVID is finished, it has been adopted in lots of parishes, and people use the video as part of in-person meetings as well as in Zoom. But the first year we ran this, we had about 60 parishes taking part, and in all the cases, we trained lay people in how to run the program. So what we're going to do now, and hopefully this will work all right, is I want to show you the video. It's just about 4 minutes. It's an explicit attempt to have a conversation with the parents.
In life, we are always changing. Right from the start. What an amazing transition. We celebrate this at baptism. The wonder of you in God's eyes and in ours. We grow. We change. We learn. We move on. Leave something behind for a new world of possibilities. We know how sacred this is. A big transition. Remember the excitement and what it was like for parents. Letting go and letting it be. Remember this. You welcome Jesus to be your friend for life. Now, as you flower as a person, we see the wonder of who you can be. What God made you to be. And now, another big transition, an ending and a beginning. Going to a new school, from senior to junior. Lots of new people, unfamiliar. Meeting new friends. Something very exciting is happening. Hopes and expectations. And letting go. Feeling anxious. The unknown. Parents look ahead to the coming years with deep hopes for your happiness and worries that all will go well. At this new time in your life, confirmation is celebrated. It is good to remember you are not alone. You are surrounded by care. Somebody will always be by your side. And more, God walks with you, loving you every moment of your life. God's Spirit, our strength in every moment. We pray for this strength when we are anointed at confirmation. We say yes to this. Yes to myself, unique and gifted. Yes to others around me. I can be thoughtful and kind. Yes to God in my life, always with me. St. Paul says, Nothing can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord.
Sinead, you want to come in?
Hi, Martin. Good to talk to you. Thank you for that. Like I thought the video was very touching. And just, it was lovely actually to hear the voice of a young person narrating it. I think that's very effective. Um, and maybe I just got lost in your explanation to the run. So just to be clear, I suppose for me on the sequence of how you did that. So you had the questionnaires with the parents. So were the videos produced in response to the
Yes.
answers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the whole idea, like I suppose what Pope Francis was saying, you can't speak to people if you don't listen to them.
Yeah.
So we said, let's actually not presume we know what's going on in the lives, say, of the non-practicing parents. Let's just listen to them. Let's try and get some sense of the depth of their inner world, and then let's see if we can speak to that in any way. Let's see if we can communicate with them. So that was the sequence. Now, what I'll be going on to in a few minutes is showing where that video fits into a
That's good.
program for the parents and their kids. But I
Right.
wanted to just show you the video first and to see.
And would you be encouraging us to, if we were to run that, to do the questions first, or
Um,
would to take that approach, or what?
no, not necessarily. Like what's there now is a kind of a package.
In response?
There are three videos and three 30-minute discussion sessions that can either be done in person or on Zoom.
Okay.
And so they're now, I mean, the video was done under pressure because it became obvious that COVID wasn't going away and that there needed to be something done quickly for the confirmation season if there was going to be any outreach to parents. So that video was actually done in the space of a few weeks. So it was, so it's by no means perfect or that, but it was an effort at producing something that was intended as a dialogue rather than a monologue that reflected back to the parents.
Great, thank you. That clarified that sequence for me. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Like what some parishes have done, they've just taken that video and said there'd be a meeting with the parents about confirmation, and they would show it at the meeting, and there'd be a chat with the parents, and that'd be it. Other parishes have would go with the three videos one night a week. Other parishes have gone with the video on Zoom 3 nights in a week. It's a half an hour, say from 7:30 until 8 o'clock, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. So parishes have tried different things, but quite a lot of them have used it. But it's a resource that can be used flexibly. It can be used at a service of light. Because it's short. So what I'd be saying to you and to anybody else that's here tonight is to use it flexibly. To see where it might be of benefit. Generally speaking, the feedback we've gotten from parents has been very positive. And there's even some surprise expressed by parents at how much the church got, their experience.
Yeah, I think it's so relatable. You know,
Yeah,
it's exactly what parents will be feeling at that time,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so good, good. So anyway, there's no hard and fast rules. We'll be looking in a minute now at the 30-minute framework within which the video is situated, and there'll be three of those up on the diocesan website next week. So any parish will be able to download the resources and use them as they wish. And if there's any further support that's required, in terms of a further training night, we'd be very happy to work with that. But what we found in Dublin was it was possible, over a couple of nights, to work with some hundreds of parents on Zoom who would be leaders for the program, like three or four people in a parish, and we had 50 or 60 parishes coming together. So like we had a couple of hundred people, and it was possible to train them in a couple of hours. Okay. So I'm very conscious, like it's a different kind of program. Like what we'd have been used to would have been largely catechetical or religious education programs, where we'd have set the parents down and we would have taught them about what's the meaning of confirmation and commitment to church and so on. It would have been the church talking to parents about our stuff, so to speak. But here we're trying to engage in a conversation with the parents, where they can recognize themselves and hopefully hear something of the good news of the gospel, that as it connects with their lives. So now, again, there's nothing hard and fast about this, but this is how we actually used the program. It was as part of a 30-minute conversation, and it was done via Zoom. So the parents were at home with their confirmation child. So that's what we had asked for, that they would turn up at 7:30 of an evening in their own home with their child. So, and then what was that half an hour like? Well, there was just a welcome and hello. That was just a couple of minutes. And who was doing this welcome and hello? It was the parishioners themselves. It was a team, a small team, generally 3 or 4 people in the parish who would have done a training night with us. So they would now be running the program. Some of them weren't familiar with Zoom because it was new at the time, but what we had said to them was, one of your kids will know how to work Zoom, and all you need to do is to recruit that person to manage the Zoom session, like to send out the invites, to open the session, to put on the video clip, and so on. So anyway, they would say hello and welcome. Then there's an opening prayer, and I have that further down on the screen here. Again, you can use your own opening prayer, but that's there for you if you want it. And then there's an introduction to the video clip, and it's just called Strength for the Journey. And as you're watching it, I'm asking you to think about what strikes me most from this video. So it's the parent. Now, in about half the cases, it was a single parent with the child, and in half the cases, it was 2 parents with the child. So we're saying to them, okay, we're going to show you a video now, and we're going to ask you just to think about it and to chat about it at home. So we'd show the video, that's only a 5-minute, and then we'd ask them to be quiet for a moment and repeat the question. What did you make of that video? What strikes you most from it? And then we had this thing called the family chat for about 10 minutes, where we asked them to mute and just to have a chat among themselves. So nobody was in control of that chat. It was simply going on in the sitting room or the kitchen or wherever the family were watching the video. And then after the 10 minutes, we'd call them back and we'd say, now we'd love to hear from even a few of you, and from the young people first. Can you tell us something that you were chatting about? What struck you from the video? And what we found there was that sometimes the parents would be shyer about speaking, but the young people, what they loved to do was to operate the chat box and they'd be putting in comments. And in any event, there'd be some sort of a chat would get going, and we'd ask the parents, we'd love to hear from you, a few comments from you. And generally speaking, there would be at least a few comments. And that'd be it. We would then wrap up with a closing prayer, and we would say to them, look, if we'd suggest a home activity during the week, and again online after this, we'll have some of these up online. But it was very simple things like to look at the video again and chat a bit more about it, or to have a conversation about. Why did the parents call the child by whatever name they have? And why did the child choose whatever confirmation name they have? And what are their hopes and fears moving from primary school to secondary school? Like, there was lots of simple little things, but basically all we were doing was encouraging the parents and the young person to have some form of chat, some sort of conversation. And then the closing prayer. And again, the opening and closing prayers will be part of the online resource. So that's no, I didn't want tonight, because we only have the hour. I didn't want to be going into all of the videos and all of the sessions, but I just wanted to give you a feel for what's on offer. And as I say, uh, um, lots of parishes wouldn't now use the Zoom. They prefer in-person meetings. So what some have done is they have held regular meetings in school halls or parish facilities, invited the kids to come along with the parents, and that they would simply chat where they're sitting in the hall. And so yeah, so there's lots of um, there's lots of ways that can be done. I just want to finish now by maybe saying a word just about the broader context for confirmation that was operated in the diocese. One of the things that the diocese felt would be important was to move confirmation away from automatic enrollment in the school. That the idea that as soon as the young person gets into sixth class, they automatically make their confirmation. So what they decided was that parents would get a note home through the school from the parish just saying that there is confirmation coming on this year, and any families that are interested in having their child confirmed are invited to come along to a meeting, a parish meeting. And the parents would hear there about the arrangements for confirmation, and they would be asked to enroll, to actually make the positive gesture of saying, okay, I want my child registered for confirmation. So that was a contact point between the parish and the parents. That was followed by this program, which meant was a second contact point, and then it was followed up again by the actual confirmation ceremony. And one of the things that we've found, and I've certainly found that over the years in most dioceses, is that for the parents, the really important event is the actual confirmation ceremony itself. But for the parish and for the parish personnel, it's very often the preparation for the confirmation, like what adult education, what catechetics can we deliver? And will it result in them coming back to Mass regularly? So we found, and particularly during COVID, we found there was a huge opportunity for really providing a personal, meaningful confirmation ceremony for the families, because of necessity it had to be small and it had to be simple. So there was no big kind of preparation, there were no big choirs, there was no big activities. It was very simple ceremony where each young person was called by name, and because they were actually sitting in hubs with their family, it was possible for the organizers to go around and to say hello to each one in turn. But we got hugely positive feedback from that. Because sometimes parents would find the confirmation ceremony difficult because church is packed and it has to be organized on the basis of the bishop's diary so that you would have as many people as possible doing it at the same time. So anyway, that's just a short word on the context, the three moments, the parents invited to register with the parish, the parents invited to engage in a pre-confirmation discussion, and then the parents invited to the confirmation ceremony. That was tried to be simple and personal.
Is there a similar walking with families for First Holy Communion?
No, and there isn't, but my sense is that there could be and there should be. Like my sense is that it should be possible in the diocese, and where actually there's a gathering of folk from across a number of dioceses going to look at that question this year. Like, can we put together some program like that, say for baptism, that
Yeah,
can,
yeah,
that
yeah.
can talk to parents about what's it like having your child, and why are you calling your child Johnny or Mary or whatever, and what are your hopes, and in some way to integrate those into the baptism ceremony, so that there's something of the hopes and expectations of the parents built in, and that there is some video that tries to connect the meaning of baptism with the actual life experience of the parents as they're having this new child. So I think it'd be fabulous,
Oh, good.
if a resource like that was available, and that's so it would mean, for instance, with baptism teams, that their job wouldn't simply be to tell parents, well, this is what the white cloth means, and this is what the oil means, and this is what you do first. There'd be some sort of a conversation, um,
Connection, like a better connection.
connection,
Yeah.
and trying to include that in the ceremony. I mean, I think that there's a whole host of popular moments, but like the baptism, First Communion, and confirmation. Now, I think a much better program could be developed for confirmation, based on the approach. But I would certainly hope that over the next year that kind of resource would be available.
It'd be fantastic. Thanks, Martin. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Martin, just I can see how the parents would engage with that and they'd identify with it. And I think what's really useful is the time where the parent and child were given to talk, that it would open up that possibility of having that conversation. But sometimes parents find that difficult. So yeah, I really like that part of it, that's built into it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that the parents fed back was, and that even the parish personnel, was that instead of the normal thing of the parish inviting the parents into the parish space, it was the reverse. The parish was going into the home space, through the Zoom, so that the parents weren't going out to a space. They were in their own kitchen with their own
Mhm.
with their own child. And even in terms of the listening, we found that really powerful. Like originally, when we had planned to do the listening, we had figured it would be focus groups. You'd have 4 or 5
Mhm.
parents gathered in a room somewhere. And then with COVID, that couldn't be done. So we ended up doing it on Zoom with the parents in their own home, and we were kind of technically going into their home, electronically going into their home, but they were much more relaxed there than they would have been, in a meeting room. So we felt we got a really good feel for them.
And can I just ask, when the meetings were held in person, did that work as well with the parent talking to their child, or were they more comfortable doing it at home on Zoom?
Um, See, a lot of it depended, Bernie, on just how relaxed the parish was. You know, that if you
Yeah.
can create a non-formal environment, that makes an awful difference. And just
Hmm.
kind of being relaxed and allowing the parents to relax. And there's a certain pandemonium that comes with that. You know, it's not neat
Yeah.
little circles. So,
Mm.
so you know, that's that. Um, but generally, what we found was that the video resonated with the parents in particular.
Yeah.
They liked it,
Mm.
and that was a huge plus.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we did the evaluations, that came back very
Yeah.
strongly.
Yeah.
And likewise, they really liked the simple personal confirmation ceremony compared to the big organized one.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Bernie. Good, good. Thanks very much for turning up tonight. It was great to see. We've had a crowd. But this is our third workshop, and we've had crowds at each of them, and it's great to see. And I hope you got something that of value for you, or at least I hope you'll have something to think about from tonight.